Good day, my dear friends. I have a shocking experience to share with you concerning Michael Jackson. The things he reveals while in hell is so shocking, stating the reasons why he is being sent to hell after his dead. Pay attention as I read the story. I love Michael Jackson and am his crazy fan. I will never believe I will see my idol in hell until after this experience. What bothers me much are the secrets he held on, even unto death, that was revealed unto me. Hello. My name is Shamtel. I had this experience February 2022. Recently, I had this relief to share my experiences. I was diagnosed with a rare and debilitating autoimmune disease when I was 24. It started with chronic fatigue and joint pain that progressively worsened. Everyday tasks became monumental challenges, and my once active life turned into a constant battle against my own body. Medications helped only so much. The side effects often felt as debilitating as the symptoms they were meant to treat. The disease not only ravaged my body but also stripped away the life I knew. I lost my job because I could no longer keep up with the demands. My friends, initially supportive, began to drift away as my condition required more understanding and patience than they could provide. I understood their discomfort, but it didn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. People's behavior towards me changed drastically. Strangers in public stared at me with a mix of curiosity and pity when I used a cane to walk. Some even whispered behind my back, not realizing, or perhaps not caring, that I could hear them. The most painful moments, however, came from those who knew me before I got sick. Former friends and acquaintances would say things like, "You don't look sick," or, "Are you sure it's not all in your head?" I remember one particularly harsh day when I tried to join a group outing. I was excited to see my friends and be part of something fun. But the moment I arrived, I felt the shift. Conversations paused when I approached, and subtle glances were exchanged. When we walked to a nearby cafe, my pace was slower and they grew impatient. Someone suggested I should just stay home and rest, masking their irritation with faux concern. I felt like a burden, an outsider in a circle I once belonged to. As the disease progressed, so did my isolation. Invitations to social events became rare, and those I did receive felt more like obligations from others than genuine desire for my company. I spent countless hours alone, watching life go on without me from the window of my apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating me in my solitude. Desperation crept in slowly but steadily. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I could count, haunted by thoughts of being a burden to my parents, the only people who seemed to care anymore. I imagined their lives without me, free from the constant worry and stress my illness caused them. The thought provided a twisted sense of comfort. Maybe they would be better off. One night, as the pain racked my body and the weight of loneliness crushed my spirit, I decided I couldn't bear it any longer. I felt like I was drowning in an ocean of despair with no shore in sight. The idea of ending it all seemed like the only way to find peace. I sat at my desk, writing my last comfort note to my parents, tears smudging the ink as I tried to convey my love and my apologies. I wanted them to know it wasn't their fault, that they had done everything they could, and that I was simply too tired to continue fighting. I left my home quietly, ensuring I wouldn't disturb my parents. I walked to a secluded park, the one place that had always brought me solace. I had been saving my pain medication for weeks, hiding the pills in a small, secret compartment in my room. The idea of using drugs seemed both fitting and merciful, a way to quietly slip away from the unbearable reality I faced every day. Sitting on the familiar bench, I poured the pills into my hand. They looked innocuous, just small capsules, but I knew they held the power to end my suffering. I hesitated for a moment, a final pang of doubt piercing my resolve. But the thought of continuing this life, of waking up to another day of pain and isolation, pushed me forward. I swallowed the pills, each one a step closer to peace. As the drugs began to take effect, a drowsy numbness spread through my body. The physical pain started to fade, replaced by a deep, encompassing fatigue. My vision blurred, the edges of the world softening into darkness. I lay back on the bench, looking up at the heaven, feeling a strange sense of relief. The end was near, and with it, the promise of release from all the torment. My thoughts drifted to my parents, my final wish for their happiness and peace. I wanted them to remember me not as a burden, but as someone who loved them deeply, someone who was finally free. The world around me faded, and with a final, shuddering breath, I closed my eyes, welcoming the darkness that would bring me to a place beyond pain. As the darkness enveloped me, I felt a sudden, intense lightness, as if a great weight had been lifted from my chest. The pain that had gripped my body for so long dissolved into nothingness. It was as if I had been unchained from the physical world. I opened my eyes, expecting to see nothing but the void, but instead, I found myself floating above the park bench where my lifeless body lay. The world seemed different now, a ghostly reflection of reality. The colors were muted, and everything had a faint, ethereal glow. I looked down at my body, feeling a strange disconnect. It was me, yet it wasn't. The pain, the suffering, the weight of existence, all of it was left behind in that shell. For a moment, I simply hovered there, unsure of what to do or feel. There was a profound sense of relief, but also a creeping confusion. Was this death? Or was it something else? The questions swirled in my mind, but there were no answers, just an overwhelming sense of detachment. I noticed that I could move effortlessly, gliding through the air without the need to walk or struggle. It felt like swimming through a gentle current. I drifted away from the bench, feeling drawn by an invisible force. The park, so familiar in life, now seemed strange and otherworldly. Immediately, I realized I drifted aimlessly for what felt like an eternity until I found myself on a wide road. The place was barren, stretching out infinitely in all directions under a dim. All around me were other souls, each moving steadily along the path. They appeared as faint, shimmering figures, almost translucent, yet unmistakably human. Despite the sheer number of them, I observed the faces of those around me, and what struck me was, each person seemed to be driven by an unseen force, moving forward with a clear sense of purpose. There was no hesitation, no looking back. Their expressions were solemn, almost resigned, as if they knew exactly where they were headed. Despite the slow, deliberate pace at first, I soon realized that we were moving at an unnatural speed. It felt like walking on a conveyor belt, where each step covered more ground than physically possible. The urgency grew more faster with each passing moment. The road began to narrow, and the atmosphere grew heavier, more oppressive. The air itself seemed charged with a sense of urgency, pushing us forward faster and faster. My confusion and panic resurfaced, but I found myself unable to resist the momentum. It was as if an invisible hand was propelling me forward, urging me to keep pace with the others. I tried to slow down, to take in my surroundings and make sense of them, but my body, or whatever form I was in, wouldn't respond. The forward motion was relentless, and the further we went, the darker and more foreboding the path became. Shadows loomed on either side, and a distant, almost imperceptible sound began to reach my ears. It was the faintest echo of wailing and cries, growing louder as we progressed. The road twisted and turned, descending deeper into an abyss. With each step, the sense of impending doom grew stronger, yet there was no turning back. We were all on this path together, and there was only one direction to go: forward, into the unknown darkness ahead. It started as a faint murmur, barely audible over the oppressive silence. But as we progressed, the sounds grew louder and more distinct. Cries of anguish, desperate wails, and tortured screams echoed around us. The sounds were disorienting, coming from all directions, yet seemingly from nowhere at all. Each step brought us closer to the source of the agony. The cries were not just sounds, they were expressions of torment that seemed to seep into my very being. I could feel the pain in those voices, a raw, unending suffering that entered me to my core. It was a great despair. As the sounds of agony grew louder, a horrifying realization began to dawn on me. This place, this road, was leading us to hell. The thought sent a shiver of dread through me, but there was no turning back. The path was set, and the force driving us forward was irresistible. We passed through a massive, looming gate made of twisted, blackened metal. The structure was adorned with carvings of tormented faces, their expressions frozen in eternal agony. As we crossed the threshold, the full horror of our destination became clear. This was hell, a place of unimaginable torment and despair, where souls were condemned to suffer for all eternity. Inside, the scene was even more harrowing. Rivers of molten lava snaked through the landscape. Souls were scattered everywhere, writhing in pain, their screams piercing the heavy, acrid air. Demonic figures moved among them, inflicting further torment with cruel delight. Everywhere I looked, there was pain and despair, an unending cycle of torment with no hope of escape. The realization hit me with full force. I was in hell, and there was no way out. As I moved deeper into this infernal realm, I felt a growing sense of dread and hopelessness. The road had led me here, to this place of unending suffering, and I knew that I too would soon be engulfed in the flames of torment. I must say, hell is a realm of perpetual darkness, illuminated only by the flickering flames of eternal torment. Everywhere I looked, I saw souls in unimaginable agony. They were stretched out on racks, their bodies twisted and stretched in unnatural ways, screaming as demonic figures inflicted unspeakable tortures upon them. Some were chained to burning pillars, their flesh searing and regenerating in a never-ending cycle of pain. Others were submerged in lakes of fire, their cries bubbling up through the molten surface. The demons took perverse pleasure in their work, their faces twisted into cruel grins as they devised new and inventive ways to torment their victims. They wielded instruments of pain, spiked whips, red-hot pokers, and other cruel devices, each designed to maximize suffering. The souls writhed and screamed, their torment eternal and unending. Amidst the chaos and torment of hell, I caught sight of a figure in the distance. As I drew closer, I recognized him immediately. Michael Jackson stood alone, apart from the other souls, yet surrounded by an aura of suffering that was clear even from a distance. I approached cautiously, unsure of what to expect. To my surprise, Michael Jackson turned towards me with eyes filled not just with pain, but also with remorse. Without hesitation, he began to speak, his voice trembling with emotion. He uttered words that sent a chill down my spine. I sold my soul to the devil, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. The admission hung heavy in the air, a shocking revelation of the depths to which he had fallen in his quest for fame and success. He spoke of the deals he had made, the compromises he had accepted, all in exchange for worldly recognition and acclaim. He recounted moments of desperation and regret, moments when he had bargained away his soul without fully understanding the consequences. Now in hell, those consequences were all too clear. He was trapped in a cycle of suffering, haunted by his choices and unable to escape the torment that he found himself. As I listened to his confession, I felt a mix of pity and horror. Here was a man who had once been a cultural icon, now reduced to a shell of his former self, paying the ultimate price for fame and fortune. He expressed a longing for redemption, a desperate hope that somehow, someday, he could find forgiveness and peace. But in hell, redemption seemed like a distant dream, forever out of reach. I saw how he was bound by heavy chains. The chains were unbreakable and weighed him down, preventing any movement. Each time he tried to speak or move, the chains tightened, causing excruciating pain. I saw how he was subjected under a spotlight. The spotlight was a beam of searing fire, following his every movement, burning his skin and causing unbearable agony. Demonic figures in the audience taunted him, their jeers and laughter echoing through the infernal theater. They threw accusations and insults, amplifying his sense of isolation and despair. Michael Jackson was forced to stand before a massive, distorted mirror that reflected his life's regrets. The mirror showed not his physical appearance but his soul, twisted and marred by the deals and compromises he had made. Every moment of weakness, every deal with dark forces, played out in vivid detail. As he watched, he felt the pain and suffering of those he had hurt, a torment that cut deeper than any physical pain. The agony of hell consumed me, both physically and spiritually. I looked around me, witnessing the suffering of countless souls condemned to this infernal place. Their cries echoed through the cavernous depths. As I reflected on my own life and choices, regret flooded my soul. I had believed that death would bring an end to my suffering, but instead, it had plunged me into a darkness deeper than anything I had ever known. The realization of my damnation was like a heavy weight upon my spirit, crushing me with the knowledge that there was no redemption, no forgiveness in this place. I longed for a second chance, a way to undo the choices that had led me here. But in hell, there were no second chances, only endless suffering and regret. I then began to feel like I'm being pulled by an energy upward while in my regret, just like the first pulling felt that took me the down path of hell, same pull began to drag me upward. It's a force I cannot resist. In just a moment I regained consciousness, the sterile, white walls of the hospital room came into view. The steady beeping of the medical machines was a constant reminder of where I was. My body felt heavy and uncooperative, as if moving through thick mud. The medical staff called my recovery miraculous. They recounted how my heart had stopped. But against all expectations I survived. It was clear that they never anticipated my return. 2 days later, as I was wheeled out of the hospital, the world outside seemed transformed. The sky was a vivid blue, with fluffy clouds drifting lazily by, and the sunlight bathed everything in a warm glow. It was as if I was seeing the beauty of the world for the first time. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and the presence of a loving, non-judgmental higher power. I started working with children who have special needs. There was a purity and a spiritual connection in these kids that I found deeply moving. Despite their challenges, their spirits seemed to radiate a closeness to the divine that I wanted to be part of and nurture. I came to understand the gravity of suicide and how many people never get a second chance like I did. Without my near-death experience, I might have been another tragic statistic. My mission now is to share with others that there is a loving force out there that cares deeply for each of us. It's crucial to reach out for help and not suffer in silence. There is no shame in seeking support, and there will always be someone willing to listen and assist. For anyone feeling hopeless, I urge you to change your mindset. A shift in perspective can lead to a transformation in your life. Embrace the belief that you are valuable and loved. Life is about experiencing, learning from our mistakes, and growing. Each of us is on a unique journey, and every soul has worth. Remember, you are loved, and you are never alone. We ask that you subscribe to our channel to continue to get updated when we share other people's near-death experience. Thank you.